Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, yWhales, wherever you are today. So looking right now, it is September 22nd. Bitcoin is sitting right around 19,500. Really not a ton of great economic news on the horizon, but it is a green day in the crypto market. When we're not in this bull run, which means, when you're in a bull, you throw a dart at the dartboard and it's like, did you just outpace all the other green arrows that you're moving up? When we're not in a bull and we're a little bit of a bear, that's where really some of the great innovation happens, because suddenly the developers, the minds can kind of pull back and say, let's really think about this, not from a monetization standpoint, but from a utility and also kind of a legacy standpoint. Like, we want things to live on. And so I'm here today with Tuom, and really want to kind of dive into, kind of the background of where he started from, because this is probably one of the more different projects, because it seems like it's combining a little bit of real world with digital, blockchain. And so I think that that's always really interesting when we kind of start going from just the JPEGs in blockchain space, to actually something that you can physically hold in your hand. So Tuom, let's go ahead before we get into what you're working on today. A little bit of your background, because it's a very interesting story of how you got here.
For sure. Thanks so much, Jay. Really appreciate you having me on the show. My background, I started out as a physicist at Caltech, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but a friend of mine came up with a really cool way to do some simulations for how light goes through small optoelectronic devices, and so he started a company, and I helped him get that going, and raised about $500,000 in venture, and did that while we were still undergrads at Caltech during the late '90s tech bubble. And everybody knows how that tech bubble wound up, and it collapsed around us. But we were fortunate that the company got rolled into another company, which then later got sold to a very big company. So I can't say my experience was all good, nor was it all bad. But that really instilled in me the passion to be an entrepreneur. I really loved kind of being on the forefront and the bleeding edge of technology, and that kind of really helped me think about what my next steps were. I mean, most of my friends were going to grad school to get their PhDs. I'm sitting there designing loudspeakers, designing code, doing certain things to try to figure out, well, oh my gosh, where am I going to innovate next? So I built custom high-end loudspeakers for a while, and Jay, feel free to interrupt me anytime.
No. Listen. I own lots of loudspeakers.
Oh, okay.
Like you can remember, we're at the end of the day, we're geeks. Like, blockchain is just the focus we have today, but we've all kind of come up through the ranks of like, what's the nerdiest things that we can play with over time. So
Yeah.
yours all fit right within our wheelhouse here.
Cool. So yeah, I have a couple patents on loudspeaker technology that I invented while I was an undergrad at Caltech, and they own the patents on them, so that's pretty cool. They paid all the money for it, so they get to have them. But I did that for a few years in the Beverly Hills area. I was designing and building custom high-end loudspeakers for wealthy people, as well as doing some consulting for commercial loudspeaker companies. And it was a lot of fun. But at some point, the 2 a.m. calls from attorneys trying to figure out how to work their DVD player just wasn't. I couldn't imagine myself doing that for the rest of my life. So I decided to close up shop. I went to business school, and while in business school, I started working with a few former venture capitalists and a few other people in that kind of vein. And I got introduced to an opportunity at UCLA, and it was a group of professors that had a really interesting technology on how to vaccinate people against Staph aureus and Candida. So the main guy there came to me one day and he said, you've started a company, you kind of have the drive and the passion to go and do things. Can you help me start this? I need your help. And I said, sure. And so, my very first day of biotech was basically creating a biotech business plan. I dragged it around in my backpack, started to raise money, and fortunately, after graduating, I was able to raise a $18 million Series A, which included Domain Associates and Kleiner Perkins. And that's kind of started my biotech entrepreneurial journey. And so, working on a few projects in biotech space, consulting on a few more, eventually for Novodyne, that's the company that I co-founded. We raised a little bit more than $70 million in funding through both venture and federal support, and then in 2015, 2016, we had a successful positive phase 2 clinical trial data for a vaccine. But lo and behold, there wasn't much pull from pharma at that time. There wasn't much interest in infectious disease or vaccines. And so, the technology is now sitting on the shelf of a European pharma company. So, I value the experience that I had. It wasn't a phenomenal exit for us, but the path is what's important. And so I applied that experience to a few other companies. Most recently was a company called Vivace Therapeutics, who's developing an oncology drug currently in phase 1 clinical studies. I helped Vivace raise a $30 million Series C when I was there, including RA Capital Management, which is like an $8 billion venture fund, and Boxer Capital. And, they're on the races. So, I think this is just the way that entrepreneurial journeys go. You take what you can from the path, and you cross your fingers that it's going to work, especially in biotech. I'm crossing my fingers now for something that might happen 5 years from now in the clinical study, right? um, but
But these are really interesting, experiences that I think a lot of people that are building in blockchain right now may not understand. The reason for the innovations of things like DAOs, the innovation of reasons, why there's such a need for an open ledger, is exactly the things that you just said happened. Is creators, people that put in the energy. And I understand capital is easy, we can find money from anywhere, but the idea to create something that changes the world and then actually properly use it by the people that understand it, is exactly why DAOs will end up kind of eating the world, is because you can suddenly have people, especially in an oncology type patent, and this could save people's lives, and sitting on the shelves of some random company just because it's not interesting to them at this point, is where the world is headed, to get away from, is these centralized gatekeepers that choose what you're going to see, why, and how, compared to if you were able to build that today again with a DAO. The only thing stopping you would be, is there enough interest? And I think that's really a bunch of fascinating, which is why we always start with kind of the background, because regardless of whether it's related to blockchain or not, you just showcased 3 or 4 use cases for why blockchain, cryptocurrencies, and Web3 technologies are desperately needed, in both healthcare, finance, and other avenues.
Yeah, I think for better or for worse, when you have disruptive technology like blockchain coming out, there's going to be early adopters. You're going to have skeptics. You're going to have people that are so kind of dug into their position, and it becomes more of a fight over emotion than a fight over reality. And I've just witnessed this throughout my career in blockchain, as well as trying to introduce the concept of what we're working on to my parents, to my friends, and trying to recruit people that I have tremendous respect for to come in and help me. And they say, well, isn't blockchain this and this? And I say, nah, that's what people do with the blockchain. That's not what blockchain is. And so I think there's just a tremendous amount of education. The world is going to be flipped upside down by what comes out of blockchain in the next 5 to 10 years, and we're not going to recognize the world that we live in today.
I completely agree, and I mean, everything we build with Web3 technologies, in my head, I've got a 10-year-old and a 15-year-old, and that's who we're building for. Most of the people that are our age that have gone through this, that kind of predated Web 1, those of us dinosaurs, like, we just look at the world a little differently. Like, if I shut down my computer, or delete my social media accounts, like, life goes on, I'm totally fine. But that's not the next generation. They were born with a mobile device and always connected, and so they really think of things differently. And so the idea of true digital ownership, the idea of true digital identity, is something that they're craving desperately for, so they don't have to start over all the time. I mean, the idea of moving from one game to one game, or one social media platform to other social media platform, and losing all your likes or your shares and your fake internet points, which can be turned into real internet points, and,
Yeah.
and sometimes monetizable through great things like DeFi, because if Reddit suddenly just started distributing upvote coins, who knows, a marketer may want to buy them and use that kind of cloud. So there's a lot of really amazing use cases. But you obviously have, you've done a lot. You have a lot of really, amazing experiences. And I'm guessing you've got a few kind of very intricate passions and hobbies that you've kind of been ingrained with in your life. So let's talk a little bit about those, and leading into the project that you're working on today.
Sure. So two of my favorite hobbies, and you'll certainly appreciate why I started Collector. Two of my favorite hobbies. One is Magic the Gathering. So I started playing Magic in early 1994 when I was in kind of late middle school time. And I just fell in love with the game. It was kind of a brand new way to play, Dungeons and Dragons on the lunchroom table for 15 minutes. You didn't have to have this huge campaign like you see in Stranger Things going on for weeks and weeks and weeks. Um, and it was a great thing for me because me being a geek and a nerd, it allowed me to kind of experience that passion and hobby with fellow like-minded people and just really really get into it. So it was kind of my community and my thing. So I was I call myself a semi-professional player. I wrote for Scry magazine back at the time. I won a few big tournaments in the New York City area, and I collected a bunch of cards. So what's left of my collection you see back here and in the nice big safe in the back. Um, and I've just held on to them for a long period of time. So I just love the hobby. The other passion of mine was blockchain. So initially, when I heard about Bitcoin in like probably 2011, 2012, I said, "Oh my goodness, this is just going to flop. Nobody wants to buy this thing." And then I just kept on watching it, watching it, watching, and I said, "What are people doing? What's going on?" And then it went all the way up to $1,000, and it dropped down to 200 or something. And I said, "All right, I'm going to get in now." And so I started mining Bitcoin on my desktop, and I did that for a few years until the ASICs caught up, and it didn't make any sense to me to do that. And then I got into Ethereum. I love gaming, and so I had a nice rig already with two graphics cards, and whenever I wasn't gaming, I was mining Ethereum. And that kind of just started getting me deeper and deeper into the community and the system. And all the while I'm here being a biotechnology executive, and my passion and hobby is in something completely different. And so, when I finished my last biotech gig, I kind of said, well, with DeFi, that was a really cool time over the summer. Looks like NFTs are starting to get really popular now. Maybe it makes sense for me to kind of nurture this idea that I had, which merges my two passions of collectibles as well as my passion for blockchain into an idea and a concept, which is really to create something that's beneficial for the community and the ecosystem. And having been a collector for the last 30 years, happy birthday, Magic the Gathering! It's your 30-year anniversary. Having done that for so long, I know where all the cracks in the system are. I know where people get defrauded. I know where people are paying too much money, which is, if you're thinking about your passion and a hobby, there's nothing worse than to have that be stepped on or destroyed or made worse. And I've had so many good experiences with this, and I want to make sure that we build the ecosystem for collectibles to support people enjoying the hobby and not having to constantly worry about getting transaction fees being too high or getting defrauded over here or not knowing what to do there. So everything I'm doing is really to try to put the hands back in the power of the collector so that they can determine their own future. And blockchain is just the perfect medium to be able to do that.
No, I obviously I completely agree. And so let's kind of talk, just dive right in, and let's hear the elevator pitch, because I think we've definitely given anyone who's interested in kind of just any trading card or any kind of passion around these physical items, and there's an entire industry on, is this real or is this not?
Yeah.
I know people that have cards that are worth 4 or 5 digits, and I know they go up from there. So I mean, it's really amazing to kind of hear, this old 30 years old, and suddenly this new technology, blockchain, fits in and solves a need that you guys have been struggling with for a while. So I'd love to hear the solution.
Yeah, so I the problem, the friction came to me. I've had these cards for a long time, since the early to mid '90s, and I have about 10,000 assets behind me that each have significant value, right? So if I were to go in and say, okay, how do I get value out of this? How do I sell them? The obvious answer is eBay. I think eBay was a phenomenal innovator in the late '90s to be able to bring people together from across the country in a kind of a trustless way to allow them to do these transactions. But it's not foolproof, and so part of the issue that with eBay is not eBay itself; it's with what people do with eBay. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But let's say if I want to go and sell a card, and here's a mana drain. This card was printed in 1994. It's worth a few $100. If I wanted to go and sell this card on eBay, what I have to do is I have to go and, I'm not going to use my phone to take a picture because then it's going to look bad. So I need to use a flatbed scanner. I need to go in and retouch the colors. I need to go and put that on an eBay posting. I need to go in and write the right content and text so that people have trust in what I'm selling. Then when somebody wins the auction, I have to go and follow up with them. Can you make payment? Here's where you do it. Oh, I need to ship the item. I need to go and find a package to put this in. I go to FedEx. I go and ship it with FedEx, and I come back, and all of a sudden, I've sold a card for $300. It's taken me 2 hours worth of time. And to me, I could spend that time consulting and make twice as much. And it's not worth it to me. So I have cards worth hundreds of dollars just sitting around, that I can't really do anything with. And that's assuming the transaction goes well. If the transaction doesn't go well, I had an experience last summer where I sold a card to somebody in Croatia, and that card went into customs going into Croatia and got stuck for 2 months. The card stuck for 2 months, and then basically the card got returned to me. I asked the buyer and I said, "Hey, are you interested in getting this card back?" "Oh, no, I don't want to. I don't want to wait another 2 months for it." And then I go to eBay. I say, "eBay, this card got returned to me after 2 months being stuck in customs. Can I get my transaction fees back?" "Oh, no, it's beyond our window for that." So it's just, that's kind of what I mean about the feel bads. That feels bad. Here's something that I should be enjoying, my time doing, and now I'm dealing with customs hassles. I'm dealing with chargebacks and returns. I'm dealing with high transaction fees, and it's like, man, I'm done. I don't want to. I don't want to do this anymore. So, what I'm doing here with Collector is basically taking our physical assets, our cards, and I'm creating a mechanism to take these cards and represent the ownership of these items on the blockchain. And the way I do that is I take the card and you're able to, and we're starting with graded cards. So these are cards that have been graded and verified by expert third parties. Some of them like PSA and CGC have been around for decades, right? So these are trusted brands. They go and look at the card under a microscope and make sure that that card is real and authentic. And then they go in and what the idea is that the card will go to a vault, and there's several different vaults around the country and around the world that have climate controlled, high security, foot thick concrete walls. Think about like Fort Knox for collectible cards. And so these cards enter the vault, and once they're in the vault, then we can go in and say, all right, we know the card is in the vault, we know the card is authentic. Now we can create an NFT that represents the digital certificate, the digital ownership of that card. And now once you have that NFT, you know, because people have trust in the vault, they have trust in the grading platform, and they have trust in our platform, they can do whatever they want with the NFT. I could send an NFT of this card to somebody in Japan on Solana in 400 milliseconds.
Hmm.
I can trade, the person in Japan 5 minutes later can sell it to somebody in Australia. And you could do a whole bunch of things that for until now have been impossible, right? There's very difficult for somebody in, for example, Japan to buy something from somebody in Europe on eBay. These kind of like different mixes of things are very difficult. And, here in the United States, we're so used to eBay being easy, right? Because it's all done in US dollars. It's all done through the FedEx or US Postal Service. But once you put customs in there, once you put currency conversions in there, once you put time of risk and jurisdiction, like how am I going to sue somebody in Japan for selling me a card that's fake? Am I going to go in and go to small claims court in Japan? I have no idea where even to begin, right? So these are kind of the things that we're going to solve by putting these into a vault where they're stored and insured and verified, and allowing people to run around in the blockchain and do whatever they want to do, listed on a marketplace, listed on a collateralized lending platform. And at the end of the day, the value of the NFT is always tied to the value of the card, because you'll be able to go to our platform, you'll be able to say, ship me the card, burn the NFT, and then we're done. You get the card shipped to you, and it's not being shipped by somebody like me who obviously doesn't know how to ship through Croatian customs. It's being shipped by a company that's been doing it for 30 years, that has, freight forwarders. They have all the right people in place to make sure that card gets to where it wants to go.
You know, I absolutely love this. And I've seen a few of these concepts with watches and wine and a few others. Because it does make sense. There's a lot of people that are active collectors like you that buy, sell, and trade these things, they don't even look at them. They're not interested in playing them. They're just, that's where they're focused on, is this. And that core concept of, how do we, something as small of a card, there's real no, like, carbon footprint to this thing. It's existed for, years and years and years. And, the weight of shipping a card is minor when you're talking about, entire, like, 747s full of UPS packages and FedEx packages. But the reality is, it is that time. And I think time is the most valuable asset that any person can possibly have. And as you said, spending 2-3 hours on a frustrating process, even if it's correct, it's still, you're right. I have an entire basement full of things that I have no interest in whatsoever. And I would absolutely eBay them, but I dread having to actually deal with what happens when they sell. And I know there's a gazillion eBay shops that will take care of your stuff, but I don't want to deal with them either. So the concept of what you're doing, where you go, look, there's a third party here that's validated, verified, and confirmed what this is. There's a second third party, and it could be the same person, that's storing these here. And so you can move this thing around the planet 1,000 times, and it never has to move. And it doesn't take anyone's time away, distraction, to be able to kind of, say, hey, I've always wanted to own one of these. Oh crap. Now all of a sudden I have an opportunity to own this over here. Let me resell this or free up the capital, liquidate that for myself. And so I think it's a fascinating, concept to do that it clearly is going to be coming. Talk me through a little bit of the, basically the process from start to finish. And I know you have a demo that we can see as well. So
Oh, of
whenever that's
course. Yeah,
appropriate
yeah.
to bring in.
Yeah, no, I think that's thanks for reminding me. So the process, basically, you have to start you have to start somewhere, right? If you have a raw card, like this is a raw card, we're going to be announcing partnerships with grading companies where you'll be able to just ship the card to the grading company, and the grading company will either stick it in their own vault, or or they'll send it to a different, third party vault, as you're saying. And so, basically, you can get a stack of these cards, ship them into a grading company, and then once that whole process is done, you'll get an email saying your NFTs are ready to mint. Come and do it. If you already have the cards that are slabbed, that's kind of the slang. Cards are slabbed. They're usually in these, tamper-evident, sonically welded plastic cases. And basically, that card is very difficult to damage when it's within the case. And the case, if it's been tampered with, it's pretty easy for an expert to see. So these cases you can take, imagine if you have, and I know some people, like I'm not going to name him, but there's a very good blockchain attorney who who's probably going to watch this show. He has in his garage in his house, he has literally stacks and stacks and stacks of these slabs, and they're just sitting there in his garage. And he said, well, when you launch the platform, let me know. I'm going to take these all, I'm going to stick them in a box and ship them to the vault, and now I can enjoy my hobby in front of without going through these stacks of cards. And I think these are the people who we're trying to sell it to. So in his case, he would just go and take all the cards, stick them in a box, and ship them out. And maybe this is a great point for the demo. Let me share my screen here.
Yeah,
All right,
please,
here
please,
we go.
please.
So this is still in closed beta. If you guys are interested in checking it out, come to our Discord channel. I'm sure they'll be in the show notes, and we'll get you access to the closed beta. We're kind of going into rolling waves of bringing people on. We have about 60 people right now, kicking the tires.
That's
So
amazing. So real quick, I can see right here with your Phantom wallet, you chose Solana as your blockchain. I
yep.
believe that's
So
a good
this is
choice. Well,
this is all
what
built
was the
on
logic
Solana.
there?
So Solana, I think, we had a few different iterations of the idea. We obviously, ETH layer one is the home of NFTs. It's the heart of NFTs. But with the limited kind of transaction bandwidth that they had, and the high fees and the gas fees and that kind of stuff, our whole ethos is to try to make it as fast and simple and easy for collectors to use. And if somebody's going to pay $20 to mint an NFT, that if the card's
Might as
worth
well drive
50
to the store.
bucks, yeah, if the card's worth $50, now you're dealing with other types of fees, right? And
Yep.
you never know with Ethereum. Like, right now it's pretty cheap to do stuff, but maybe 3 months from now it'll be very expensive again. You never know. So we looked at a bunch of Ethereum compatible sidechains. We looked at Polygon. We looked at Arbitrum and some of these other things. And I think what we were really impressed with Solana on was the ecosystem that they were growing in the NFT space. So thinking about like Magic Eden, they were just making such tremendous waves in the NFT space. A lot of new NFT projects were going there, and Solana really, to me, felt like it was becoming the home for where the blue collar community was going to go and hang out. This is where the people would go for their NFTs. This is where people would go to work on their projects because yeah, I mean, Bored Apes and that kind of stuff. I think those are really cool, but at this point, those are pretty inaccessible and to most people. And I wanted to make sure that where we built this platform, it would have maximal utility, highest bandwidth for number of transactions that can happen, lowest fees for whatever you're doing on the blockchain. And the fees on Solana are almost non-existent, and the speed is just phenomenal. So what I'm going to show you here on the beta would take so much longer for all the API calls and the blockchain calls that we're doing throughout the process on another blockchain. So I think just the user experience is going to be better.
Yeah, and the thing to point out for anyone listening that kind of maybe not fully understands some of the reasons for these things to exist is Solana is a new blockchain, does not have the legacy code that Ethereum does. Ethereum was launched prior to NFTs even being a conceptual item, whereas Solana has built into the base code non-fungible items and the ability to have those in there. So on Ethereum, you actually have to write a separate contract. It could be an ERC 721, ERC 1155, but it's an entirely separate essentially almost small DApp, contract that you have to put on chain. It sits on top of the chain, and then people can react to it just the same as you could almost a wallet. It's just a contract that sits there. Solana does a little bit differently. They've baked in so many features that even on Ethereum are not even possible to do, and so it's a very different experience. Our Gen 2s, Crystal Whales, there's one of the Gen 1s floating behind me right now. We did on the Solana blockchain, and we had to rethink everything we were doing because suddenly we had so much more freedom to do conceptually things that aren't possible on Ethereum today.
Wow, great answer, Jay. I'm going to use that next one. That was awesome. Thank you. So here's kind of the dashboard in our platform. I'm going to look over here. I have another monitor, so I apologize if the audience is wondering what I'm looking at.
No, you're playing you're playing a game on the other one. It's fine.
Playing Magic. So here we're going to have a screen where you could create a profile, and immediately you might say, well, what's a profile for? I just want to have my wallet and cards. But a big part of collecting is being able to flex and show off your collection. So I'll show you why that's relevant here in a little bit. So I mean, here's my Twitter username. Feel free to DM me on Twitter if you have any questions. Obviously, this is not my real address, so don't worry about it. But here's my username, right? So here's kind of info you put in, and then it's so simple to get an NFT of your physical card. So here you click the button for mint PNFT, mint physical NFT. How many cards in your shipment? 3. Total value of your shipment, $30,000. Description, 3x Pokemon cards. I agree with the custody agreement. All right, let's create. Now all of a sudden you have, what you need to do to ship the cards into the vault. You have your shipping identifier. So this is a QR code that you can take a scan of and ship it. In the box, you have the details that are in there, and then you have the vault address. So now you take this information, you go to your local FedEx store, and you say, okay, here's the things I put in. We don't pay for your insurance. You have to pay for your own insurance. A lot of people ship these things without insurance. Personally, I have my own insurance policy that covers everything I ship, so I don't have to buy individual insurance on each one. But that's up to the user if they want to insure the shipment. They take the risk there. Go to the shipment, and here, so now I came back from FedEx. I have my tracking number, bop, just a fake number. Hit submit, and now we see that the item's in transit. We're going to follow that item through transit when it's been received by the vault, when the vault is processing it. So they're going to take high resolution scans of it, and they're also going to populate the metadata for us. And then once it's ready to mint, you'll have this lit up right here. And I apologize, I didn't have one spooled up for it, but basically there'll be a button where you could click right here that'll say mint the PNFT. And then you'll see a nice little animation of the transfer of the PNFT from our wallet to your wallet. And then voila, it'll appear in your collection. And here it takes a little time because we're, of course, pulling the data off of IPFS. And now you see the card assets for cards that are, in our DevNet vault. And so just for fun, I'm going to take a Magic the Gathering card, the iconic Black Lotus.
Mm.
So here's the card. This card is just, the most coveted Magic the Gathering card of all time, and there's a few different versions of it. This is one of the cheaper versions, but it's still worth a lot, $20,000. And here you see more details. This card was graded by PSA. The grade was mint 9. Here's the vault location. Blockchain is on Solana. We do have plans to be multi-chain, so we have a place there. And then token ID, and you see here that all the data that you would expect with an NFT is actually stored in metadata. So here I'm on the SolScan blockchain explorer. All the data is there, images of the card, all the card attributes. So everything I mentioned about the card is all stored in the card metadata as well. And then of course you get to see the provenance, the trades, everything that happened, who owns the contract that minted the token and all that kind of stuff. So really it's that's how easy it is to mint a PNFT of your physical asset. And now the question is, what can you do with it? So we haven't linked it up yet, and we haven't announced it yet. We have an awesome announcement on the way about a marketplace partnership that we have. And the idea is that you'll just come here, click this button. It'll link the card to the marketplace, and you'll be able to say, okay, auction this card off. Set a ask. I'm going to sell this card for $20,000. Anybody can come and buy it then, or make an offer, just like you would at any NFT marketplace. Or you can come in here and do something, and you could say, well, I want to burn it. So don't burn the cards. But now I'm just showing you here what
T-
it is.
T-
So,
Tom,
yep.
I have to tell you, this is one of the most in-depth, like, use cases that I've seen of a physical, real life item matched to a digital NFT to date. And I see a lot of these things. And so I really want to just right off the bat give you and your team credit, because the fact that you guys are even matching metadata from the NFT world into the physical, assets of this, it just suddenly makes sense. I think, to a lot of people. And I constantly try to explain, how NFTs can and should work in the physical world, because, the JPEGs are cute and they're great. Some of them have utility, some don't. But what you've built here, and I'm actively impressed, and it's hard to impress me at this point in my life, is something that's really deriving a lot of value towards collectors, but also I think towards a variety of other industries. That are tied into this as well. Again, the loss of time, the friction to do some of these things, is the reason why some people don't get into certain hobbies. I don't have the time for that. I don't want to, I like it, but I don't want to deal with it. This is something that opens a gateway for people in certain parts of the world that do not have access to own these cards or be around these cards. And I really am very excited about this, what you've done here. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. That's so kind of you, Jay. Really, really appreciate it. I mean, I've been working on this nonstop for the last 12 months, and I haven't taken a single penny of salary. So, it's great to get that compliment from you, especially. Thank you.
No, absolutely. So talk me through how you built this. What's your team look like, and then we'll dive into kind of the community that you built around this.
Sure. So our team, I have three co-founders. Two came on a little bit earlier, so I've known them for a long time. So Dax is our chief technology officer. He was a friend of mine from back in the Caltech days, and I'll just stop my screen share so that you kind of see me a little better. Um, and Dax and was a big Pokemon player back in the day, and we never really connected over collectible cards, but I knew he had a passionate, he knew I had a passionate, so it just kind of stayed in the back of my mind. Dax went on and got into cryptography in the early 2000s. And then he got into digital marketing. He started up a digital marketing company that was acquired. He became CTO of the acquiring company, and then that company fell apart at some point during the great stagnation of 2011 or 2012. But then he started another digital marketing company that with a couple other people, and he's basically been responsible for creating online marketplaces for major Fortune 500 brands. And so I thought he would be a great fit given his, collecting experience, his cryptography background, as well as his experience building kind of unique digital marketplace experiences for major brands. And so, I mean, I'm sure you see some of the work that he's done here with how the UX and how easy it is just to do everything on the platform. And then I have a fellow, really good friend, Richard, and Richard is a math geek from University of Santa Cruz. He's a game designer, so he not only codes and does that kind of stuff. He, as a hobby, he goes and builds games, and he'll go in and take cardboard and cut things out and really kind of piece it together. And then he loves to have people over his house and building these games and stuff. And it's just a he's just a great person to interact with and bounce ideas off of, because he's always thinking, how do we make this a good experience for people, and how do we make sure that we're not abusing kind of the trust that people give us. And everything that we do from a design perspective on this is really meant to put the power back in the hands of the community. And we don't have a demo of what the token is going to be here, but we are going to launch a collector token. And basically that token is going to open up a bunch of different things. One, it's going to reduce transaction fees on the marketplace. Two, it's going to enable you to buy real world services and items. So for example, we might have I've been talking about graded cards a lot. We might have a service for ungraded cards where you can basically use your collector token to buy discounts for grading services for your ungraded cards. And we would basically group buy some of these things and then offer that to our community through use of the collector token. And then, of course, what would a good NFT project be without a digital gallery? So we don't have a demo to show here, but imagine a 3D game engine rendered gallery where instead of having a Home Depot shelf holding your cards, maybe that's what you start off with. Maybe you start off with a Home Depot shelf, but then you could spend collector token to go and upgrade your hideout and customize it. You could bring NFTs from elsewhere into the gallery that'll also be displayed. And really, it's to allow influencers and to allow people to create their own digital footprint around their collections. Because right now, I mean, I bet you probably can guess, how many people do you think I've shown my collection to in the last 10 years? My full collection. Who have I opened up my kimono to in the last 10 years?
Um, if it's anything like when I show people my hobbies, it's the people that live in my house, and even then they don't want to see it. So
Yeah,
almost zero.
that's it. And the reason why I haven't done it is because, I have the cards right here. I have a piece of glass right there to my backyard, and I have two young kids upstairs. And if I ran around saying, I have this much, and I'm showing it off, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. So, this is solving a real problem for me to be able to share my love and joy for this hobby. And so, one thing that's really cool is that, within our platform, you can create links to actual individual items or to your whole collection, and you'll be able to put that link on Twitter or on your social media, and people will be able to see that, and they'll say, "Oh wow, this is on the Collector Crypt website. It's attached to your Twitter handle or your username, and now for the first time, I could prove to my audience and my followers and my friends that I actually own these items." And that hasn't been, you think about it, well, that's so simple. Why don't we have that? But we don't. And it's absolutely crazy that there's so many influencers out there on Twitter that go on to Google search and they search for, Mickey Mantle rookie card, and they say, "Oh, look, I own one of these," and they don't. Um,
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I mean, like I said, the verifiable identity, verifiable ownership. I mean, this is all where blockchain is going. And so, again, there's a lot of times where I see projects, and I go, you've taken a Web 2 product and you've made it infinitely more complicated with Web 3 technology and provided no extra value. This is one of the cases where I can say clearly you guys did this correctly, and you're utilizing blockchain correctly, and I do believe you chose the right chain for his amount of volume and the things you guys are going to be doing. But I want to talk a little bit about like who is going to be kind of the best use case for these, and it usually starts with building a community. Because a lot of things get built in vacuums or in bubbles, and then suddenly it's like, as you say, you open the Komodo, here's what we have, and there's crickets.
yeah,
So talk a little bit about the community you guys have around you today, and kind of where that's going to go in the roadmap.
sure. We have a few different. I'm a big fan of segmentation. Because there's a lot of different kinds of people that'll use this platform in a lot of different ways. So yeah, you start out, you build in a vacuum because nobody wants to see it until you're ready. So our community right now is kind of in two separate parts. One part is really interested in this physical to digital kind of concept that this is going to be the next wave of blockchain. Blockchain is, we started out with DeFi, then we went to NFTs, and now we're going to go to solving real world friction. So we have a lot of community members, mostly our Telegram, that are there saying, okay, we love the concept of this project. We're not necessarily collectors ourselves, but we certainly see the future for blockchain solving real world problems like this. So, that's kind of where we started, because you can kind of you build dreams and you build hope for what the future of something is. Another part of our community are actual, what I would call utility users, people who are going to get into the platform and really use it to solve some of their real life challenges. And I've had so many conversations with different people, and one for example, you can imagine a baseball card dealer that has a store. They might do 15-20 million dollars worth of revenue per year, transactional revenue, right? So they have their storefront, they have the cards in the glass shelves, they have all that kind of stuff, and all the time they're presented with the issue of, okay, I have these cards here, they're not really selling, I've had them for 6 months, I got to make some space on my shelf, I'm going to go sell them on eBay. Or they might have somebody walk into the store holding their grandfather's collection who recently passed away, and they say, I have no idea what these worth. And then as a store owner, you say, well, I could do the bad thing and I can, offer them a lowball thing and try to take all the cards. Or I could say, well, look, your collection is worth a lot of money. I really don't have the bandwidth and space right now to interact with it. I'd like to help you, but I just can't do it right now. So this is a store right there that missed two huge opportunities. The first opportunity is just for inventory that they have. If the store has the opportunity to sell these items at basically, somewhere between 0.5% and 2% transaction fee, they'll be able to have much more flexibility on how they price their assets, without having that, cliff to say, okay, once I list this on eBay, I know I'm going to be paying anywhere between 10 and 13% transaction fees. I'm going to have to deal with chargebacks and returns and credit card processing fees and PayPal and all this kind of stuff. So, you imagine buying a card for $1,000, you're hoping to sell it for, $1,100, and it doesn't sell for 6 months, and then you have to list it on eBay and you take a $500 loss on the card. So these are the decisions that these store owners are facing every day. And with the flexibility of our platform, being able to move from one selling mode to another doesn't have as high cost for them. So that's kind of one point for the store owner. For the case where the person comes in with a large collection, the store owner might say, okay, yeah, I'll buy your whole collection from you, and I will actually pay you something fair for it. Maybe I'll because I'm buying it as a group, because I'm doing it right here, I will basically offer you 10% less than what I will be able to resell it for. And if they have a platform with high liquidity, they could just take that box, ship it into Collector, click a few buttons, and within like 5 or 10 minutes of actual time, I mean, obviously it's going to be in FedEx for a couple days, but in actual time that they're interacting with it, 5-10 minutes, they're able to list that whole collection on our marketplace partner and be able to sell it for a fair price. And now everybody benefits, right? The person selling the items doesn't get ripped off. The store gets this opportunity to make an extra 10% without much effort, 5-10 minutes of effort. And the whole ecosystem, when you pull that sand out of the gears, then all of a sudden this flywheel can start moving. And once that flywheel starts moving, I honestly believe that we're going to have a revolution here in the collectible space.
Well, and there's a few points that you've made that I think are entirely valid, and there's others that are going to need to be adapted to the way communities operate now. Which is, I apologize. What was the card you showed me that it was worth 20,000?
Oh no, the Black Lotus, yeah,
Black
that's over
Lotus.
there.
Okay, so
Yeah, yeah.
the ability for you to go online right now and say, hey, I want to have a sub community of an already Magic the Gathering community that's only for Black Lotus holders, doesn't exist. You'd have to do the exact thing where someone's just downloading images and saying, hey, here's what I have. They're photoshopping it in. You actually could truly token gate a part of your community where somebody has to verifiably have that NFT. It's been verified by a third party, and now you can have a conversation with just the Black Lotus holders about these things. And I think that there's again, like you said, so much utility that's coming in so many different ways. And so I'm not an investor. For anyone that's wondering, why is Jay so excited about this? I just really like to see good utility use from blockchain projects. And there's so many that it's like, we built it, isn't this cool? And I said, well, what's the real world value to this? And they go, because it's just cool. And I go, okay, I hope, good luck. I wish you the best of luck. I hope it's really cool. But there's a lot of needs that it's solving. And I can say this as a father that has two kids. And I have boxes and boxes of Pokemon cards that are worth God knows what. And irregardless, they do have, attachment to these things. And they do talk about it with their friends. Even the 15-year-old that's in high school, he still, refers to these. This is a great way to get them out of my house. and to put them somewhere where theoretically, when he goes away to college, I'm not just the one that goes and dumps the box at Goodwill and says, hey, goodbye. And then the kid shows up years later and goes, hey, where'd all my Pokemon cards go? My mom still tells the story about all of her original Barbies that are worth, hundreds of thousands of dollars today that my grandmother had thrown away. So I think there's a lot here. And I'm really excited for you. What's kind of the next item on your guys' roadmap?
Sure. So we believe kind of the bridge, the physical to digital bridge, as well as the marketplace are kind of two primitives that's going to enable a whole ecosystem to flourish. I mean, I love that you brought up the idea of a token gated community. I think, not just Black Lotus, but think about Magic the Gathering. Is there a community of people that just a global community of Magic the Gathering traders? I have a hard time finding them. You find little bits and scraps here on Reddit and other forums on Facebook groups and that kind of stuff, but there's no place where you could really go and interact with people and actually be able to show what your collection is. Like maybe you want to do a trade and you want to say, I want to trade these 3 cards for those 3 cards, and we're actually going to have an escrow service on our platform that allow just free trading between people in the community globally. Like a guy in Japan might want to trade with somebody in Florida. How does that happen now? It doesn't. And so I think these are all things that we are on our roadmap. But some of just the more practical things that we're very excited about. We're going to launch a decentralized lending platform against these PNFTs, and in contrast to traditional NFTs like the PFP ones, like your Bored Apes, these assets are denominated in U.S. dollars, right? You have a deep and very historic market in cards that has gone on for 150 years. The price of your Black Lotus is not going to drop 30% when the price of Ethereum drops 30%. But that's what happens to Bored Apes, and that's what makes it very hard to do collateralized lending against some of these NFTs. And yeah, projects are doing a great job doing it, but it's hard, right? But for our Black Lotus, right, you'd be able to borrow, $10,000 against that card. The card's probably going to increase in value 10 to 15% per year, and because it's a very stable. The collectible cards are far less volatile than anything else on the blockchain except for stablecoins. And so they will be an asset that's going to hold value no matter what the market is doing. And here you can borrow against them with stablecoin. And because that asset is so non-volatile, you're able to lend against that card at extremely, competitive rates. So if you look at DeFi right now, DeFi lending on US dollar coin might be 3%. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm envisioning a future where you'll be able to borrow against your Black Lotus at 4.5 or 5%, which is phenomenal. It's less than what you could get a new mortgage on your house for, and it's
and,
because
and it's providing liquidity, which is
it's
the one thing
providing
that everyone
liquidity.
misses. Yeah.
And
I,
the problem that I have is that these cards I bought in the early 90s, mid 90s, my Black Lotus is worth 1,000 times more than what I paid for it. And here in California, if I sell my Black Lotus, I have to pay capital gains tax to both California as well as the federal government. And I think you add it all up, it's going to be around 39.5%. So if I sell my card, for $50,000, I'm going to wind up sending $20,000 of that to the government next tomorrow, right? And which means that I don't want to sell it. I never want to sell that card. But how do I get the financial utility out of it then?
yep.
So and blockchain is the only place you could solve that. Going beyond that, I think there's a huge opportunity for creating investable indices of these, graded collectible cards. So you can imagine, let's say you have $10,000 in your pocket and you're really interested in investing in vintage baseball cards. How do you do that now? You go onto eBay and you might buy 1 or 2 cards. Hopefully you don't get defrauded. Hopefully you know what you're buying, right? And then, of course, you have to deal with the transaction fees back and forth and shipping and insurance and all that kind of stuff. But wouldn't it be cool if there were a DAO, an investment DAO out there with $100 million worth of vintage baseball cards in it. And now all of a sudden, you could go to a decentralized exchange and you say, well, yeah, I want to buy $10,000 worth of collector vintage baseball DAO. And now you pay 0.3% transaction fees on the decks, and then you have exposure to that full index of those cards. And then 3 weeks later, after the World Series of baseball and people are interested in the cards, maybe baseball cards have pumped 10%. You go back and you say, all right, I'm just going to sell it, and you pay 0.3% on the way out, and it gives you a much easier and more liquid way to interact with these types of assets. And then I'm not going to get started. I don't think we have time, but there's a whole potential to use these PNFTs as game assets as well. And think about being able to play like fantasy sports games with actual physical cards. Things you used to do when you were a kid. You open up a wax baseball pack in the 80s and 90s. And you say, "Oh, I'm going to build a team out of these players, and we're going to roll some dice and play a game." With the blockchain, you could actually do that. And I think that is so powerful, because now you have people that are collecting these things as a hobby and as a passion, and they're doing it because they love it. But now you could say, okay, take your whole collection and let's play a game with it. Let's create some deeper experience. Let's create some deeper ways you can interact with your hobby. And these things are only possible on the blockchain. And that's why I'm so excited.
Tom, like I said, I'm really just amazed at what you guys have built, and in a very short amount of time. With a very new technology that's emerging. Building on Solana is not easy. And when I say it's not easy, it's because it's a very new chain that's being rebooted and rebuilt constantly. So the ability for you guys to take a very traditional asset and tokenize that in a proper way, and then be dealing with all the different infrastructure flow. And I'm going to tell you that the real kind of like aha moment for me was the fact that you integrated in the shipping there. Because right now, when people say, hey, should I be getting into blockchain, crypto, everything else, my first answer is absolutely, but it's really hard. It's a really difficult thing to do, and to self-custody your own capital or your own assets, it's not an easy thing. And so anytime I see someone that just has that extra thought, removing a little bit of extra friction and solving that original problem that they set out to do without creating 20 other new problems, I really like to give praise where that's due. And I commend you and your team for really thinking through this and making it something that I'm sitting here in my head going, it's actually easier for me to go and utilize this platform that you guys built for my kids than it is for me to think about just leaving them in the dusty box that it sits in. So congratulations to that.
Thank you so
As
much.
we move to close, is there any kind of final thoughts, or where can people find you if they want to kind of play with the platform, those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, love for you guys to come and join me on Discord. We're still early in the company stage, so I think the executive team is very accessible. You'll notice my Juzam Jin. That's a magic card. You could search it, and that'll be my profile picture in the Discord. Message me anytime. You could also find me on Twitter at Tuom Holmberg, and you could find our Discord link on our homepage, which is collectorcrypt.com.
Fabulous. yWhales, any of you guys that are either collectors yourselves, have family members or kids that are collectors, check out what Tuom and his team have built. yWhales, I'll catch you guys next time. Thank you so much.